I have a seasoned and fascinating guest, Dr. Reverend Tracy Cox, who's a spiritual leader with over 25 years of experience, and her journey spans decades of diverse traditions, from her upbringing in a spiritually rich family to her extensive academic and practical training. At the age of 18, she had a profound near-death experience that sparked her spiritual awakening and set her on a lifelong path of metaphysical exploration. Her ancestral roots trace back to her great-grandfather, who founded the Moravian church in Jamaica in the 1800s, and this lineage helped shape her spiritual heritage. Today, Dr. Reverend Tracy Cox synthesizes teachings from Christianity, New Thought Metaphysics, Reiki, yoga, and more into her own syncretic spiritual philosophy and practice. She's an ordained minister, Reiki master teacher, and licensed member of the clergy in Ontario. And with a passion for helping others connect to their own authentic expression of spirituality and divinity within, Dr. Reverend Tracy Cox believes we're all spiritual beings and children of the same God. Tracy, welcome to the Transcendent Minds podcast.
Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. From reading some of the material, facing challenges was an integral part of your journey, and your metaphysical brush with the in-between realms would shake and stir their soul in ways they cannot
Yeah,
imagine.
absolutely.
And I would suggest that it cracked open a profound new awareness, because I know it did in me, of the divine energy that pervades all existence. And it was a near death experience at the age of 18 that
That's right.
that truly awakened you to the existence of a higher power. How did this experience shape your understanding of spirituality, and what challenges did you encounter in translating this newfound realization into practical guidance for others?
As you just went through an NDE, you know what I'm talking about. When you're in a medical emergency, sometimes you'll be losing consciousness, which was happening with me. I've always had an awareness of God. I've always prayed, like even as a young child. It's just always been who I am. Whether or not a wild and crazy teenager, whatever, I still prayed and believed in God. So for me, it wasn't something new. But when this happened to me, I started to pray. And as soon as I started to pray, I found myself up and out of my body and in my spirit body up in the corner of the hospital room. So I could look down and I could see the doctors working on me, but I knew that I was up and out of that situation. And then there was such a profound feeling of peace, of timelessness. And what I really noticed, and I don't know if you noticed it too, but when I was out of my body, I knew that it was still me. It still looked like me. And even though it was in a light body, it was essentially who I was. So I feel that we retain personality when we step into the spirit world, when we go to the other side. And I think what really scares a lot of people is that they think that they'll just cease to be, and it couldn't be any further from the
Mm.
truth. You are yourself. You are yourself at your peak, to be honest. Once I was out of my body, like I wear glasses, and all of a sudden I could see and I didn't need my glasses. Did you notice that too?
Yeah.
It was such a beautiful, super saturated color palette, like nothing you've ever seen. Everything was alive. It was pulsing with that energy. Did you find the same thing? Unbelievable.
It was like throwing this old winter coat off of me. I felt totally unfettered and unencumbered and light.
Yeah, exactly. The other thing I noticed was that when you focused on a wall, like how you would focus now, if you were thinking about being on the other side of that wall, you would just be there. So everything was very seamless. It's really hard to describe unless you've seen it. I think some movies do a good job of it, depending. There's paranormal movies where they try to teach what it's like. But it's just like you said, taking off an old winter coat, the material body, something about our material body, I think, keeps us from seeing the spiritual world. Maybe that's to keep it so that we don't just lose our minds because there's too much coming at us all the time. It's like a governor that's over us that makes sure
Mm,
that it gets through so that we can handle it. Because if it was always coming at us like that, like when we were out of body, you just wouldn't do anything.
that's a key word because in that place or space or dimension or whatever it may be,
I think
it's
we're
here.
standing in it here now.
Right.
I think that we're in the spiritual world right now.
Wow.
Something about our physical bodies makes it so that we can't see that. But when they're gone, I believe, like I've seen manifestations of people and they're right there. They could be right there right now watching us do this, right? Friends, angels, guides. We can't see all that because we would just lose our minds. It would be too much to grasp in these bodies. Once we're
Yeah.
out, then it's going to be amazing.
When my mom was in hospice and she died of dementia, I was there for the whole 8 week period till she
Sure.
died. In speaking to the hospice nurses privately, they've said there has been many a time, this one particular nurse told me, where she has seen the etheric body of the deceased
Sure.
person standing by the bed.
Seen things like that.
In Greece, when an elderly lady drowned, I remember being in the ocean and I could see all these people on the shoreline surrounding this person and shouting and gesticulating. I was a registered first aider. I ran over and got the ladies to form a wall around her and then got them to take her clothes off because of hypothermia. She was taken to the ambulance. As they put her on the stretcher, I was looking at her and something inside of me said, she isn't going to make it. She was in her 80s.
Sure.
And then
Yeah.
I saw above her this translucent body, emulated her physical body, but was translucent, rising above her.
Sure.
They moved her into the ambulance and it just all fizzled out. The next morning, her son came to see me and said, "Thank you for trying to save her, but she passed away in the
Right.
ambulance."
You literally witnessed this person drowning, and
Yeah.
oh, that's sad. You saw that etheric body that we all have. You saw that soul or spirit.
Yeah.
There's many words, right? Yeah, absolutely. I think that what you saw is what happened to us when we had our NDEs is that you just come out of your body. It's a mercy.
It
No,
made me wonder when I had that ND was that everything seemed to be telepathic. It was like frequency as distinct from chemistry. It was radiational versus gravitational. It made me wonder, and I didn't realize this until several months later, whether here everything is slowed down in a 3D dimension in the gravitational realm so that we
yes.
can experience the agony and the ecstasy, the day and the night,
That's right.
and so
That's what
on.
I think. Yeah, you just can't see into that spiritual world normally. You get
So,
glimpses, and depending on how much we pray and how much we work on spiritual development, psychic development, like I'm a Reiki master teacher, so when I teach people Reiki, I find that almost all of them tune into their psychic gifts, spiritual gifts, so that they can see auras or they can see etheric bodies. It all comes in
oh yeah,
time.
I've also noticed that when you soften your gaze, rather than looking at things in a
Yes,
hard way, you allow the muscles to relax. I can start to see the etheric body. I can see
absolutely.
energy around the body.
Yeah,
You only see what you teach yourself to see. And if
that's
you
right.
teach yourself to see this is just physical, then that's what you're encoding your neurology to look through that lens.
That's right. I always say that your spirit is the driver and your body is the car. So
Mm.
if you remember that the driver doesn't always exist in the car, the driver gets out and goes to the house. And so if you think about your spirit being that way, that it's not forever attached to that particular car, then it starts to
Mm.
make more sense, right? People get very upset. And like you'll find that there's a lot of non-believers of all this, non-believers of God, whatever they call themselves. They don't want to hear us talk like this because it gets them really riled up. And there's a lot of pushback, I find. So that they
Mm.
have to make sure that people that are into the spirituality of life, it's almost like they have to convince them they're crazy. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you only have to look to ancient times as far back before Plato and Aristotle and tribes who talk about the reverence that they have with Mother Earth and the fact that they're
Absolutely.
part of her inner arrangement and the way to navigate via the stars. If we look at what and who we are, and this marvelous design, it has its flaws like any design does.
Sure, like
Things,
anything.
yeah,
Yep.
but what created that? Why are there missing parts that have been stripped out of our education so that we follow a curriculum and don't really understand more about
Yes.
the
Yes.
education of the metaphysical aspects of
Oh,
our
that's
life?
been favorite things in school growing up, like as a kid in elementary school, was when we got up and said the Lord's Prayer. Everybody got together, you could feel the energy, and they had to make sure that they ripped that out of schools because that's infringing upon people's beliefs or whatever it was taken out for. I don't personally know. The problem, a lot of that kind of spiritual stuff, like you're talking about, the philosophers taught the basics of ethics and morals. And that was the way it was taught. That was removed and nothing else was put back in. There was nothing like Marcus Aurelius, Stoicism, something to give people some form with ethics and morals. You can tell because as that's come out, the things that are going on in the world right now, like we don't need to get into them, but it's just clown world right now.
These are perpetuated by blind paradigms, and blind
Yes.
paradigms will only condition those leaders to see what they teach themselves to see. And it's not power, it's force. It's not real power that comes from the seat of divinity. It's trying to force issues.
Free speech has been shut down the way that they don't want to allow anybody to say two sides to the story anymore, which I've never seen in my lifetime. Like
Oh, me
normally
neither.
people could give their opinions, both sides, and people would, oh, that's good. And that would be the end of it. Now it's if you have a differing opinion, some of them just lose their minds. And it's very hard to see as a member of the clergy because what you're hoping is that everybody's going to come together and pull together and be kind and help others and do unto others as you would have done to you. And it's almost like that golden rule. If everybody lived by it, there's no religion in that. There's no God in that. That's just good sense, right? That's just
Right.
common sense. So it would be nice to see a little bit more of that these days.
This is where metaphysics comes in to it as well, as distinct from being denominational, which I think fragments things.
Agree. Yes.
There are potential impacts and mechanisms behind, let's say, the power of prayer. I know results are always being debated about it, but the neurological effects, brain scans now have
Oh,
shown
yeah,
that
absolutely.
practices like prayer and meditation activate the frontal lobe areas
That's right.
associated with focused intentionality. For me, prayer seems to induce a relaxed, parasympathetic, focused state of consciousness.
Absolutely. It gives people time so that, like you're saying, they're working more in the executive function part of their brain.
Mm,
And when you work in that frontal lobe area of your brain, you are looking down at your problems with the eyes of an eagle. That makes all the difference because once you can see things from a high level, you'll start to get gut instincts. You'll start to get intuition. And that is the way that God talks to us. That's the
mm,
way our angels talk to us, is in our gut instinct and intuition. If you start keeping a log of every time you get these gut instincts or intuitions, write it down when it happened and see if it was right. And you'll find that every time it is right. Every time you go against it, you'll always be kicking your butt that you went against it. Every time that you follow it, you find that was the best thing
yeah,
because that gut instinct and intuition, that is how God talks to us.
yeah.
So,
And that is what I would also call your inner tuition, because studies have indicated that prayer can reduce those stress levels by lowering cortisol
that's right.
and adrenaline, increase dopamine production linked to the brain's reward system. So it prompts biochemical changes that promote a sense of, I wouldn't even say calm, but resilience and being, so
Yeah,
that
of course,
you've got
definitely.
better psychosomatic benefits like improved psychological and physical health outcomes like lower blood pressure and better immune function and so
Yep.
on.
Yeah, that's
And
right. When I did my dissertation, I wrote it on the power of prayer, and the science backs it up. That's exactly correct. It does normalize people's blood pressure. And when you come from a place where your body is relaxed, you're going to make better decisions because you're not coming from a place of fear and panic. And those are always the worst decisions come from that, right? You
mm,
want to be in a place where you're relaxed and calm and really thinking about things from above. And that's what prayer does. A lot of people have a very strange idea of what prayer is, that you're going begging, and that's the absolute opposite of the truth. So that's what I cover in my course on practical prayers, the fact that there's a way to go about it that's positive. That's what we're trying to tap into, that positive energy of the universe. In Reiki, we call it the universal life force. There's a million different ways of describing it, but it all comes from that eternal energy of the
mm.
cosmos. It's there
Well,
for everybody.
I have an olive tree in my backyard. It went through a state of terrible weather. There was hardly any sunshine. So it started to wither. This might sound weird to some people, but on a physical level, I create the environment for it to thrive as much as I
Yep.
can, right? So
Yep.
it
I
has
understand.
enough sunlight and so on. It has enough water and nutrients and the rest of it. I actually pray for it
Sure.
because
Yep.
I think it aids even non human biological systems. And I think it affects quantum phenomena as
Absolutely.
well. So there are non local effects where prayer improves the healing. So,
Definitely. Yep.
so there's a
Definitely.
suggestion here that there's a quantum connection, or I don't know if this is the right word, but a channeling of consciousness. There's a cognitive distribution through prayer.
Yes, I understand what you're saying. Because I think that you can think about the energy of the cosmos as a giant clockwork, and God and the
Mm,
angels as a giant clockwork. And as it turns and changes, we can ask for help. We can ask God, please give attention here. The angels, the same thing. A lot of the time, they're not going to assist that much unless they are aware of what's going on. Once
mm,
we start praying, we're sending our energy to God and the angels so that they can actually open a dialogue with us. If we just live our lives and never connect that way, we're going to get a lot more kind of buffeted around by the spiritual energy, the spiritual weather. But prayer kind of grounds us in moving that clockwork the way that we want it to go, is what I've found when I've
mm.
been studying this for many years. It's
Well,
very hard to quantify, and it's really hard to explain to people unless they've started to really experience it for themselves. But as people become more spiritual, they will. There's exercises that can definitely improve your ability to interact with the spiritual. And that's what I try to do with my clients and my students.
that leads into intention and coherence. And I'm not sure if that's in your program, but when I think about focused intention behind prayer, whether that may produce a coherent biophotonic or and electromagnetic fields that can interact with and influence physical and quantum systems in measurable ways.
Sure,
And
just like Reiki, just like the
yeah, just
universal
like
life force.
Reiki,
Absolutely. Yeah,
exactly.
it's the same energy, really. Like Dr. Usui, who started Reiki, he was a monk. Really, he was talking about the divine energy, the universal life force. That's what's so great about it, is that people don't have to believe in any particular path to learn Reiki,
Mm,
because you're still working with that universal life force, and people aren't putting up their barriers. And there's a lot of churches or different religious leaders that have been not the best advertising for God. That's the problem, right? There's a lot of people that have been hurt with whatever church that they've gone to. People have been judgmental or even abusive. Spirituality really needs to be a direct thing where you
mm.
don't have to go through a middleman. So that's the main thing that I teach, is that people need to go direct with God and the angels, because going through a church, human beings are fallible, right? You just never know what you're going to get. Why can't you just pray every day and have your connection with God be all day long? That's
Well,
where I find that the real connection is to divinity.
It's
personally.
when you have a visceral experience of the NDE I had, I'm not here to convince anybody, persuade them, but all I know is that I've had a visceral experience of it. And that visceral experience to me wasn't like a dream, because I remember when I woke up and I said to the nurse, "Can you get me a pad and a piece of paper? Because I think it was like a
Oh,
dream
sure.
and it becomes fragments and I can't put them back together." No, it stayed with me.
Yeah, you just
It
wanted to get it down.
I didn't need the paper because I got that and I started writing, but it was so vivid in my mind that it stayed with me. Even to this day, I can recall every nanosecond, every vivid
Absolutely.
detail
Yes.
of that experience. I think that while skeptics may argue the effects are subjective
Yeah,
or they're just explained by known biological mechanisms, I would suggest that the existing evidence points to real and profound impacts that when we try to explain it through our current models, we can't because the
that's
current
right.
models cannot support how it can be explained. And I do think the science of prayer, the science of meditation, which is now ongoing, is
Is
further
into.
rigorous
Yeah.
research at the frontiers of human consciousness
Hmm.
and quantum interconnectedness. But we also have to look back through the new thought metaphysical movement of the 19th century because
Yes,
tradition emphasized the unity of all life, the divine presence within each individual, and the
that's
power of
right.
mind over material conditions.
That's where my basis comes out of Neville Goddard, Florence
Mm,
Scovel Shinn, Catherine Ponder, all that metaphysical new thought. And you could just go back and read all those books endlessly because it's all right there. It's interesting because it was a real movement. The population was very interested in it, culturally, really big.
mm,
And it's interesting how it's slowly trickling down to get big again. I think the New Age movement now is opening people up much more to the energies, to gods. I get a lot of clients where there's somebody that maybe has been into crystals and tarot cards, whatever, and they started doing Reiki. And then as they started doing Reiki, they started opening up to the divine energy and realizing this is God and the angels. So now I want to learn about this, right? Like it all goes together. And that's
mm.
the thing. The metaphysical denomination is open to all that. Our roots are in spiritualism. So we have no problem with people that want to be mediums and give messages from spirit from the platform. We're all for it, right? And I think a lot of religions have really demonized that kind
Yeah,
of spiritual connection. It's sad because it's so beautiful and so life affirming that if you're into that, come to the metaphysical denomination and we'll take care of you. We won't judge you for all that stuff. We'll encourage you, right? It's really sad to see a lot of religions. And this is the reason that they're all losing followers now, is because they're so close-minded to a lot of this spiritual discussion, threatened by it, that they really demonize people that want to talk about it. And of course, you're going to lose members and followers like that. If people want to
mm,
explore their spiritual beliefs, then they should, right?
absolutely. When there is an emphasis on universal truths over adherence to one dogma or indoctrination, then someone like yourself, Tracy, in terms of being a metaphysical minister, you have the latitude to develop your own spiritual philosophies, but drawing on that diverse metaphysical wellspring. But the focus is on each person's unique soul
That's
evolution.
right, because everybody, their spirituality is as individual as a fingerprint. Maybe for somebody it's music, beautiful pieces of music. Maybe for somebody it's very earth-based, the sunsets, the beautiful lakes, the nature, all the animals. Like a lot of the indigenous spirituality is to do with that. The animal spirits, the earth, the lakes, the mountains. We all connect differently, but it's
Mm,
still all God. It's still all the divine. It's just that we have to find what works for us, right? So that's what we try to do in the metaphysical faith, is we try to help people find their own unique spirituality. We don't want to be the middleman. We don't
oh,
want to
no.
be there every Sunday taking 10% and saying, okay, you can talk to God through me. That's not the point. The point is to quickly teach people to find their own way that they connect with divinity and let them get on with it. That's it.
While non-denominational ministers draw from various religious teachings, a reverend from a metaphysical denomination represents more of a profound lineage of metaphysical and new thought philosophy.
That's right.
So,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so the role,
Spiritual.
yeah,
It's very, and it's been around for a long time. Like early 1800s
exactly,
is when it
exactly.
really started.
Spiritual seekers then come into the deepest universal truths about consciousness and manifesting reality through thought and awakening to their divine nature as eternal souls on an evolutionary journey. So it's not just about providing spiritual services, but to serve as a guide, aiding the comprehensive metaphysical path of self realization
That's right.
that facilitates each individual's reunion with the transcendent source that gives rise to all creations through focused intention, through wisdom, and the commanding of unseen energies.
I don't know about commanding. I think participating is the way to put it.
Participating. Yeah, yeah.
I don't think we command anything. That's a big part when I teach clients is the fact that you have to eventually just give it away and let God take care of the details.
Mm.
That's a huge part of Neville Goddard's writings is that instead of focusing on how things get done, just focus on the end game. So if you want something to happen, what you need to focus your mind on is that thing. How would you feel if it happened? And see yourself celebrating and that thing has unfolded and whatever it is, perfect health. All of a sudden you feel perfect again and everybody's yay. Every time you get freaked out or scared or worried, you divert your attention back to that celebration of when you've manifested this. It's hard to do, but when you can do it, the miracles start happening. When you can
Mm.
just focus on letting God take care of the how, right?
And
The
I think
outcome.
that speaks more about not being worried about the how.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah.
if you can give that to your chief how officer, then you can let go of it. But we want to be gravitational. We want to be busy trying to make it happen. And I'm not saying we sit there and contemplate our navel and do nothing. Like
No, it's different. Yeah, this
but
is using your intuition and your gut instinct to guide you, but focusing on the end that you're celebrating and having
mm,
things work out. It's a very different feeling than worrying about things and focusing on things. It's a small twist in the way that you think. Takes dedication and it takes a bit of discipline, but when you can really do that, it really changes things. It's because they're not freaking themselves out all the time. Like it's really easy to get wrapped up in the how and then, oh, this could go wrong or, and then the stress builds up and it's not good for people. It's not healthy. So always thinking about the celebration when you get what you want. And God doesn't always give you what you want the way that you think that you're going to get it. So that's what I'm saying. Focus on just celebrating. Don't focus on what it looks like. Just focus on being happy, right? Because for me, that's the ultimate is to be happy. You
into a
may think
rest.
you need a palace and you need a cabin in the woods. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
You got to let it be what it is.
You go into a restaurant and you order something off the menu, but you don't go into the kitchen and start
That's
asking the
right.
chef, how are you going to
Yeah.
make it? What
Yeah.
ingredients have you sourced? When is it going to be
That's right.
delivered to my table? You don't do that. You
Yeah.
trust. You
That's right. Very
trust.
good point.
So I
So
think,
that's exercising the pillar of faith too, right? Like that
mm,
takes a certain amount of time as well. But spiritualism, the metaphysical denomination, new thought, science of thought, it's all working towards these ends, right? And that's
mm.
what I come out of that lineage.
How do you guide individuals into tapping into their true selves?
I think that we have to slow them down, like we've been talking about. We have to slow them down. Even meditation will let somebody's true self emerge because they're not always in that panic and overthinking things. Once they get into that space of just breathing and letting their body relax, once again, we're getting into that frontal lobes, the executive function of the brain.
Mm.
And then the good decisions will happen. The decisions that aren't happening in a reaction, because so many people react, they're not taking a beat and thinking about the way that they should deal with things,
Mm.
right? So as people slow themselves down, that's when the true self can emerge. But you have to be calm. When it takes a long time to get there, sometimes some people are very invested in being busy and hyper and a bunch of different things, right?
Being effectively busy.
That's right. That's
Many
right.
people I speak to go, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. You realize that they're actually delusionally busy, not
Because they're
effectively
doing
busy.
too many things and
Yeah.
trying to control it by doing too many things.
When I enter into meditation and prayer, it creates peaceful chemistry. And when I
Yes,
get peaceful chemistry, it invokes peace of mind. And when I get peace
that's
of
right.
mind, it allows a clarity of thought. Instead of a preoccupation, there is a free occupation,
Yes, I understand. That's a
right?
good way to put it. You've let it breathe. You're letting the
Mm,
spiritual air, the spiritual weather get in
yeah.
there, right? And blow it around, give it a little fresh air. Yeah, because otherwise you're holding it so tight that nothing has a chance to move and breathe and grow. That's what we're trying to
Mm,
do with ourselves. It's a lifelong pursuit, too. As we said, life can get crazy. Look what you've been through.
mm.
It creates stress. It creates a different terrain and feels the deck of a ship underneath us where it's rocking and rolling over the ocean. That's when we really have to get the way that we calm ourselves down, our meditation, our prayer, so that we can find that footing.
One of the key things I've found the last couple of years through this medical odyssey is that you have to change to meet new requirements.
Just because you used to be able to do XYZ doesn't mean that's the way it is now.
Exactly.
And a lot of people will have a horrible time letting go of it,
Mm.
the way things used to be,
What
you know?
drives you to continue spreading light and love every day? And what advice would you offer to individuals struggling to find meaning or direction in their lives?
I've been in this industry for so long. Like when I was early 20s, I started teaching yoga and guided meditation at a place called the King Ranch. And it was affiliated with the Canyon Ranch, which is like a wellness facility, world class. And the people that owned it had a lot of money and they were industry leaders as well. So we had the best of stress management teachers, different to get right down to the heart of all this. They really taught us well.
Mm.
And for me, it was just second nature to share it because I was a teacher and I taught aerobics at the same time there too, fitness. But I've always been like that because I've been trying to help people because it helped me.
Part of your DNA.
Yeah, being on the pulpit. Yeah, like even as a little kid, that's what I do. And
Mm.
it's easy. And most of the time, you can get through to people too. Some of the
Mm.
time, you're going to get people that don't believe in any of this. And there's lots of things that they could call us, but that's okay. I find that most people are fairly open to the spiritual, especially now. It seems like it's a lot more mainstream. Back when I started all this in the early 90s, that it was much more fringe. And
Mm.
so it went through things like the wellness spas where it was like meditation, yoga. So the spiritual kind of got in that way, more mainstream. And then things opened up. People got more into crystals and people got more into using oracle cards and tapping into their psychic ability. Like you can slowly see it become more and more mainstream, which is great.
Can you walk us through your near death experience and the realizations it birthed within you?
It was just that being up and out of the body and then realizing I was up and out of the body and then looking around and not needing my glasses. Like that still blows my mind. And it's so vivid to me, the remembrance of it and the fact that the colors were so alive. They
Mm.
just pulsed almost. There were colors that you wouldn't normally see, is what I found. I just found everything was so beautiful. And there was just a peace and kind of a feeling that everything was going to be okay. I don't know if you felt that too while you were out, or what did you feel when you were looking down at yourself?
I had a slightly different experience because that was the initial experience, and then I found myself in a chamber.
Okay, so you went
And
even further
so I was in
along. Okay.
this semicircular chamber with beings, and I
Wow.
couldn't attribute a sex to them, but
Hmm.
they had robes on and they almost looked like Gandalf with
Beautiful.
white
Yeah.
hair, but
Hmm.
they were spinning spheres of light.
You mean
And
like
I
in
could,
front of them?
in front of them, these
Wow.
huge spheres of light.
Beautiful.
There was no eye contact or anything. And I remember standing there thinking that I'd passed over. I thought,
Yeah,
here it
we've heard
is.
people
This is
talk
what
about
we've
this.
heard people talk about, the other side and across the veil. And
Yeah,
here I am.
that is amazing.
And at that point, I thought, I love this place. I just love
Yes.
being here. And the feelings of whew, radiance, love, but not
Hmm.
human love,
I understand. Yep.
not
Yep.
that kind of sensual
Yep.
love.
Yep.
It was pervasive. It seeped into every sinew of, if I had any sinews there.
Yeah,
But you know,
I think that the Reiki, like for me, the Reiki energy is like that when I'm working with it, when I'm
mm,
sending it to people, when I'm doing, because as a Reiki master teacher, I really believe that everybody needs to do their own self Reiki every day.
yeah.
Like it's so important. It's like the foundation. And for a lot of people that do Reiki, it's the last thing they do. Everything they're doing is, I gotta do this and for these people and this, but they never take care of themselves, which
Mm,
is important. And yes, I know what you're saying. There is a certain when you're out of your body, you can feel that energy. It's warm, it's loving, it's an embrace, it's energizing. And I feel that when the Reiki energy, when it comes through, I feel that it's the same thing. But for me, I didn't go as far as you did because they had to give me a blood transfusion. And when it went in,
wow.
I was right back down into my body. So I was up and out and seeing all this stuff and just being blown away. But then I was right back in. So you must have been out longer. What lessons are to be learned?
And at
Yeah.
that point in my mind, because everything was telepathic, in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm home. I'm going to stay here. And words that were repeated to me 3 times was not yet. You
Right.
still have work to do. And that's
Oh,
what I
that's really
heard.
cool.
The next thing I knew, there was a nurse waking me up. I said to her, are you an angel? And she looked at me like she knew.
Sure, because they see that
She
a
was.
lot.
As I woke up, I was still in this place. And then, you know how things they fizzle out like they do on
Yes.
TV? It just started to fizzle out. Then I was in this recovery room. I'm looking around. I felt like a stranger all of a
Sure.
sudden.
Amazing.
What is this place? I'd gone from looking down on me with a cut right down the middle to recovery. And I couldn't make sense of it at the time.
Sometimes it can take years and years. Like I still look back on it. And I think that the biggest thing that it taught me was that we go on even after death, that it's still us. It's still us. It's still our etheric body is still us. Once
Mm,
again, I think that our etheric body is the driver and the body is the car. The material
mm.
body is the car. We're in this world, but not of it. And I think once the material body is gone, I think we're going to be able to see everything clearly.
It's like the soul has to, in normal lifespan, it has to age in order for it to leave the body, in a sense. How did your encounter shape your understanding of humanity's relationship to the divine?
I've always believed in God and always prayed, even as a child. And when I would see a beautiful sunset or something over a gorgeous landscape, I could always feel God very strongly. For me, this is the way it is. It wasn't
Mm,
earth-shattering for me that I was thinking, oh my God, I didn't think that we lived beyond death, but now I do, because my belief was always there. My faith was always there, to be honest. It wasn't like some earth-shattering, ooh boy, this
no,
different. I knew that, so let's get on with it. Do you know what I mean? I guess it
absolutely.
did easier to talk to other people about it so that if they're afraid of it, that you can chat with them and allay their fears a little bit because you've got an actual real experience.
Something I wondered about, because it seems that your family had a sort of pioneering role in the Moravian tradition.
Yeah, it was my great uncle, Reverend
Mm,
Samuel Allen, and he built the Moravian church. He was sent to the Moravian universities. I think they were in Pennsylvania in the 1800s. And
wow.
then he was educated in the Moravian faith. and brought back to open the Zorn Moravian Church, which is still there, and it's still a Moravian church in the middle of, I believe it's in Mandeville, Christiana area of Jamaica in the center, but it's still there. And Reverend Samuel Allen, my great uncle, is buried on one side of the church doors, and his wife is on the other. She was a popular author about settling in Jamaica and church planting in Jamaica. They're called something tropical. I believe she had a bunch of books on it, but they're all in the Moravian archives now. I've never read any of it, but it was very interesting. The Moravian faith is metaphysical as well. Up until maybe 100 years ago, from the start of the faith, there was always somebody praying in a room in the Moravian church, unbroken, for a couple hundred
Mm.
years. I don't think they do it anymore, but they had a prayer circle that was always functioning.
Do you think your family's pioneering role in this tradition imprinted your psycho-spiritual DNA?
I don't know about that because there's a lot of people in my family that aren't into this at all. They're not into religion or spirituality, not at all.
Mm.
My grandmother was devout, so I think I spent a lot of time with her when I was little because she was the church organist there in the church in Jamaica. And so I think that she tried to convey spirituality to the grandkids, but not many of them were interested, but I was interested. But do you know what I mean? Like, it's not anything that's like a big deal in my family
You don't feel an
at all.
ancestral pull that's guiding your
No,
current
I don't think
spiritual
so.
work or your teachings?
I think that everybody is on their own spiritually so that they come to it in their own way. And even if that hadn't been my reality of having a grandmother that was devout or this, I think I still would be this way. That's what I think,
Mm.
anyways. Maybe I'm wrong.
That's beautiful. And I'd like you to come back to talk about your course. Give us a brief overview of it.
It's what I worked on for many years and the research that I did for my dissertation for my Doctor of Divinity degree. So I've worked with clients and students for many years with all these different spiritual exercises. And a lot of them are basically to learn how to do practical prayer in the way that makes them feel good. When we're talking about the letting go, the real kind of let go and let God. I really do believe in that because you never know how things are going to get dropped into your lap. Your guardian angels have amazing ways of doing things, and it's usually better than you could ever dream, but you have to be open to it. So that's what the course is all about, is how to connect with spirituality so that you are manifesting the best thing that is particular to you, because everybody has a different way that they connect spiritually. And there's always ways to make that connection, but they're going to be different for everybody. It's got 10 different lessons, 10 different exercises that are to enhance your connection, to get your psychic development going, to get your intuition going, and to know when it's actually intuition as opposed to sounds like a good idea, because those are different things too. I've worked with people for a long time, and these are the things that have gotten results. That's what
I'm
I'm saying,
looking
of course.
forward to explore the fascinating angles that will emerge as we discuss this program, this course. And I'm particularly interested to understand how you synthesized all these aspects, because my goal is to have an insightful dialogue that illuminates your philosophies and your work. So I'm
Yeah.
forward to that.
Yeah, I'm interested in hearing your feedback and hearing what you have to say. Yeah, because a lot of it is just keeping track of the experience that you have. And as you keep the workbook that I've got in there for people, you can see how it builds and you can see patterns with yourself too. It's pretty in depth. It's not hard, but you need to fill out the workbook and answer these questions, and you'll see.
Do you have any parting words, and where can people find you?
Oh, sure. So I'm Reverend Dr. Tracy Cox, and my website is reverenddratracycox.com. If you go on there, you can see all my social accounts, YouTube accounts. I do a lot of writing. I write for Reiki Rays magazine and Universal Life magazine, so they can see my articles there on the front page of my website and different things like this. Like when you put this up on YouTube, I'll put that in the front there too, so people can find all the cool shows that talk about all this great spiritual information that people need to know.
Any messages you want to give the audience?
I just think that it's a time for people to really embrace their spirituality, because there's a lot of negative forces at work in the world right now, a lot of negative energy, a lot of people trying to divide us. And I think that we got to keep shining our light and love, learn how to connect with God and the angels, even Reiki energy, just so that we can right the ship. I feel that there's a lot of negative energy right now that we can make a difference with. That's what I want people to do. Learn how to talk to God, learn how to pray, or connect in the way that they connect, and then use that for the good. Because as we raise the spiritual energy around the world, we will defeat the darkness. We will. We will. It'll happen.
I totally agree. Thank you so much for coming on the Transcendent Minds podcast. I look forward to the next iteration when we talk about the course.
Yeah, that'll be great.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.